This is Shaping Opinion, a production of O'Brien Communications. What's the hardest work that you ever did?
I would say, honestly, probably when I was in college. I worked at the Meadows Racetrack as a busboy and waiter in the clubhouse, and this is long before casino gaming and so forth. So back in those days, that track got very busy, but the restaurant was set up on levels. And if you had the top level, not only did you have to walk downstairs and upstairs to the kitchen, then you also had all the levels you had to traverse, and you're carrying large trays of dinners and carrying stuff down, and people are cutting back and forth in front of you. That was exhausting at the end of the day, because it wasn't just, can I carry the tray? It was, can I manage to do this without dropping this tray down 5 levels of stairs and potentially injuring someone? So, yeah, that was probably the roughest one. I mean, some things may be a little more physical, but just in an overall standpoint, that was probably it.
I'm Tim O'Brien. In this episode of the Shaping Opinion podcast, we're joined by Jeff Nobers. Jeff is the executive director of the Builders Guild of Western Pennsylvania and has helped the organization lead the way in laying the groundwork for the future of work for people that don't mind rolling up their sleeves. The premise of our podcast is simple. We talk about people, events, and things that have shaped the way we think. Today we're going to talk with Jeff about the future of work for people that don't have 4-year degrees. If you were to have a baby today, one of the first questions someone might ask you is, when are you going to start saving for college? It's generally assumed today that everyone has to go to college, and if you don't, well, that's not good. At the same time, we also hear talk about how robots and artificial intelligence are going to replace millions of jobs, especially white-collar jobs. This, we're told, is the future of work. College costs continue to rise. College graduates enter the workforce with so much debt that in some cases they're putting off getting married, starting a family, buying a house. The American dream is on hold. Last fall, the Washington Post reported that well-paying jobs that don't require a college degree are multiplying at the fastest rate in 3 decades, offering more Americans a path to the middle class. The newspaper cited a report from Georgetown University that found there are now 13 million jobs nationwide that require only a high school diploma, and they pay at least $35,000 a year. This is a higher wage than most entry-level service jobs pay. Today we're going to talk with Jeff Nobers about the future for those workers. Jeff, you're the executive director of the Builders Guild of Western Pennsylvania. Can you tell me a little bit about what the organization does and who it represents?
Well, the Guild was founded back in the late 90s. It's a labor management organization, and the membership is comprised of the 16 construction trade unions, building and construction trade unions that operate in Western Pennsylvania, for the most part, the 12 counties of southwestern Pennsylvania, as well as general and specialty contractor associations, which, of course, are the people that hire the union tradespeople. It was first founded just to have more than anything, a monthly meeting for everyone to get together if there were issues on job sites or just, maybe political or legislative issues that were impacting both sides of the equation, that they could work together and work these things out, keep the problems in the meeting room, not on the job site. In time, it sort of morphed into also a recruiting arm or a marketing arm for the industry, for both labor and management. And that's really where we are today. We get involved in some political things, but not really the lobbying and so forth. Our biggest mission is really recruiting and continuing to build a positive image for the industry. And that's really what we do on a daily basis.
The Builders Guild recently hosted a big event in the Pittsburgh Convention Center. What did you achieve there?
On the Friday of that event, it was a schools-only day. And we in the neighborhood of 4,500 7th through 12th graders attend this event. And really the purpose there was to just expose these kids, especially the younger kids, to what the construction industry is about, and also some other allied industries, because we had corporate partners there like Peoples and CNX, Duquesne Light, U.S. Steel, ATI, all industries that need the same type of people that we need in our industry. People that do want to, we say work with their hands, but it's not that it's intensive labor all the time, but it's a different kind of work than being at a desk and just processing thoughts or working on a computer. And the other aspect that a lot of people don't understand is these are very technical careers. They're not jobs, they are careers. And you have to be technically adept. You have to have good math skills. You have to have problem-solving skills. So really it's to expose these kids at a younger age to what these careers and industries are about. Not so much that we're trying to convince them in 8th grade that they should come into our industries, but they at least keep us in the consideration set as they move through high school and make those decisions as to what they want to do with post-secondary education.
You kind of beg the question, what are some of the myths? And you kind of said it just now. You said it's not just a job, it's a career. And you said that it's not just, you do need other skills like math in a lot of cases. What are some of the myths around blue-collar jobs?
Well, I think one of the biggest myths, especially as it relates to our industry and many of the partner industries, is that these jobs don't pay well. Or if they do, that you're laid off a good portion of the year. And that's just really not true. Sure, in construction, there's still some seasonality. Folks that work heavy highway that are maybe running, asphalt equipment or dozers and stuff, sure, they've been off for the last 4 to 6 weeks, but they're all starting to go back to work now. The upside is you can collect unemployment when you're not working. But on the other side of that, in that 10 months you worked, you've probably made more money than a lot of people make in 16 months. So just with a little financial planning, you're in pretty good shape. So that's sort of myth one. And layoffs aren't like they used to be in construction. It's far more a year-round industry now. The healthcare benefits are phenomenal. I mean, I would challenge anybody to show me an industry with better healthcare benefits than the folks in our trade unions and contractors have. And defined pension plans. I mean, who has defined pension plans anymore? Very few companies. It's typically a 401k, which, as we all know, can fluctuate wildly in any given quarter. So, the compensation is, I think, far above what people believe. I think another big myth is that these are somehow lesser jobs, subservient jobs. Yeah, you wear blue jeans and a sweatshirt, and yeah, you get dirty. But you have to be just as technically adept as anybody that sits in an office, anybody that's working on a computer all day. You have to have very good math skills. When I sit here and try and figure out if I wanted to build a deck, trust me, it would take me hours to try and figure that out, and I probably still have it wrong. You talk to these even the younger kids at the carpenters that are second and third year apprentices, they can whip this stuff out in no time flat. So, there is that professionalism to it. And people don't look at that. I think we've just so discounted these types of careers over the past 20 years with this college for all mentality that, we've really started to make those inroads again and show people, look, these are really viable alternatives to a 4-year degree. Not that there's anything wrong with a 4-year degree, but the message is make sure you're getting that degree in something that you can actually build a career in and be successful in. As I've said to guidance counselors, I mean, how many English lit majors do we need working at the coffee shop, putting a little heart on the top of the Frappuccino? I mean, it's just, it's sort of silly when you think about it.
Well, you meet a lot of people in the building trades. Can you describe any of the stories that they might tell you about what might have surprised you when you learned about life from their point of view?
I think one of the biggest things is I didn't even really understand how lucrative these careers could be. When you see fellows retiring at the age of 56 or 57 with well over $1 million in a pension plan, annuities, Their health care fund's paid up, so it carries them out to basically Medicare. And the comfort of their retirement, that really surprised me from that standpoint. But I think the biggest thing is that there truly is, throughout everyone I've met in the trades, there is a great pride in what they do. I built that stadium. I built that office tower. I built this road. I remember a fellow told me a story. His father had worked on Three Rivers Stadium when they built it. And when they imploded it, his dad kept saying, "Don't ever bring that down. Never bring it down. We put so much concrete and steel in there." Well, they did bring it down. But the point was, he still had that pride in that stadium all those years later, saying like, my work was good. They're going to have a hard time bringing it down. So I think that to me may have surprised me more than anything, that pride and camaraderie that you have in the trades.
Are there any individuals that you've run into who conduct trainings that have a personal story that you might say is one that just sort of stands out for you?
Well, one that readily comes to mind is we have a training director, and I'll leave him be nameless, but he dropped out of high school, sort of bounced around working minimum wage, odd jobs, and so forth. Finally decided to go back and get the GED. Got the GED. Again, just did some minimum wage stuff. Really didn't know what he wanted to do. I don't remember if it was a relative or a friend kept telling him he should, look at this certain trade. And finally he did. And he applied and tested and got interviewed, and he got in. And, today he's running the training for that union. He's getting close to retirement age. And he'll flat out tell me, I'm set. I'm set for life, and here I am, some goof that dropped out of high school all those years ago. So there's a lot of opportunities. And I think at the end of the day, what we tell everyone, if you're willing to work hard and show up on time, which quite frankly is no different than any profession. It's the same for you and I as it is for a construction worker or a person that works retail. If you want success, you have to put an effort into it. And that's what we explain to people. And if you can do that, and a big thing, remain drug-free, because we really ride hard on that, you're going to build a very successful career.
When you're talking to high school kids and you're trying to explain some of the things we talk about, one of the things it's hard, I know, to convince a high school student is 401ks and health benefits, why they matter. Maybe money matters to them, but I'm not so sure about that. When they look at the work that some of these people do, maybe they're not willing to do it. So how do you convince high school students to keep this as an option?
Well, I think one of the big things is showing them that the end-all be-all is not just graduating from the apprenticeship. If you go through a 4-year apprenticeship with the carpenters and you graduate, all right, now you're a commercial carpenter. Well, that does not mean that all you have to do for the next 40 years is pound nails and function daily as a carpenter. During that apprenticeship, you get 44 credits at CCAC. You can go back and get your 2-year degree in construction management or construction estimating, and you're reimbursed for those additional credits. You then are on a path where you can go to work for a contractor managing projects, and now all of a sudden you're in a career that's in high demand that can pay you easily $120,000 to $140,000 a year with a company vehicle and all these other perks. And this is someone who ostensibly just graduated from high school. They did not go to college for 4 years. I know a lot of kids that come out of college, including my own, that are not making anywhere near that money after investing $125,000, $150,000 in that degree. So, part of it is showing them that there are paths beyond that apprenticeship. View apprenticeship, that's our version of college. It's post-secondary education, because not only do we teach you skills, we teach you about the industry. We teach you how to grow within that industry and the things you have to do to be successful in the industry. So it's a well-rounded education. It's not just here's a hammer, here's a nail, here's how you cut this. There's a lot more to it. That's part of it. I think the other thing is at that age, certainly money, that's what they think about. Although I will say some are a little bit astute about the health care, especially. Not so much, they're not thinking about retiring in 40 years. But health care they get, because I think in this market especially, all the things that go on with health care, they understand that. But, we have kids. I mean, they're kids. They're 19 and 20. They graduated from high school. They've gone into the operating engineers. They're a second-year apprentice. And they're making $110,000, $120,000 a year take home, running, backhoes and dozers on gas lines and things like that. So the money is there to be made if you're willing to work for it.
Podcast listeners are special people. You're curious. You like to try new things. We know this because you're listening to us, and we appreciate it. That's why we thought you might also like to try another podcast that we like a lot. It's called History That Doesn't Suck, and it's hosted by Professor Greg Jackson. Greg will educate you, he'll entertain you, and as a bonus you can connect directly with Greg and he'll get back to you on social media. Greg has a PhD in history and has taught the subject in a university for years, and other colleges actually use his podcast to help teach their own students. What I like about the History That Doesn't Suck podcast is how much fun Greg has with the subject. He draws you in and always tells an interesting story. Make sure to add the History That Doesn't Suck podcast to your list of favorites. It's on all major podcast channels and on social media too. Are there certain types of people that are attracted to this business, and not just physically and not just mentally? Or what are the traits do you think make the good people that work in this business?
I think some of the basic traits are, having an attitude about, wanting to be part of something that's just bigger than yourself. A lot of times what you hear is, at the end of my day, I can turn around and see what I've accomplished. It's a very physical thing in front of you that you've done. Also, when a project is done, to be there when it opens and stand there and look at that building or that stadium or that highway, whatever it was, and know that you really played a significant role in getting that done. So there's that pride, I guess, of ownership of what you do for a living. I think the other aspect is, people that enjoy being part of a team, not lone wolves, if you will. Ex-military do very well in the trades. And I think it's because of that training they've had. If you're a platoon of insulators, you've got a mission and you've got to get that mission done, because if you don't get yours done on time, the next platoon can't come in. So there's, there's sort of that regimentation to it. But by the same token, you can sort of be a free spirit too, because you are in effect working for yourself. You're going to go from job to job. So I think that's a lot of the kind of personality there that people need to have. They want to have that pride. They want to be able to be a part of something bigger than themselves. A little bit of entrepreneurship, if you will, but then also that being part of a group and that camaraderie that comes with it. Not that that's absent in office jobs and other things, but when you're thrown together out on a job site, it's a little different than being in a large office where there's 50 or 60 people. It's a whole different kind of environment.
Well, you hit on something a second ago, and that was, you mentioned ex-military people, and I was going to ask you about that. When you look around at the workforce, is there a certain percentage that's ex-military, or how do you define the role military people have played in finding a place in the building trades?
Yeah, it's hard to put a percentage on it because not everyone tells you they're ex-military necessarily. But, from just talking to folks that are in the trades that came out of the military, it's that kind of thing. It's a similar...
Like a pride, huh?
Yeah, mindset, psychology to what they learned in the military. And a lot of the skills they learn there, and not just hard skills, the interpersonal skills, the teamwork skills, the reliance upon another skills kind of a thing are very important. And the one thing with veterans, when they come back into the civilian workforce, oftentimes, they're in a position where they have to pursue something that doesn't pay them even what they necessarily were earning in the military. But the nice thing about the GI Bill is generally a veteran's going to qualify for a gap payment. So the gap between that first year apprentice wage and the journey person wage is going to be made up as their training by the government under the GI Bill. Since they're not paying for the training, which is free, they do make up that gap during the time they're in the training. So, there are advantages that, veterans can look at and apply for. But I think, again, it's that sort of same thing. You're part of that, smaller team, platoon, squad, whatever the correct terminology is, and really working with and for each other.
I think one of the things we keep talking about here is stereotypes, and sometimes people fit within a stereotype, and sometimes that's the myth you're combating. The one where they would fit within it would be the military people. They might be a good fit for a certain job because of their pedigree. But there's another stereotype, and I know that I kind of have a feeling for where you might come from on this, and that is, can women find a place in the building trades?
Well, we have, I would say, probably of our total universe of journey persons, it might be about 5 or 6%. Nationally, it's about 8.5. If you go back prior to the housing bust, back there around 2007 or so, with that 4-year depression we went through, women were starting to gain and make up bigger percentage of the construction industry generally. And of course, a lot of people left the industry during that time. It's still tough to convince women that these types of careers are something they would want to do. They don't see themselves moving pipe and welding. They don't see themselves lugging some bricks along on a job site. And I can certainly understand that. I think certain trades are more attractive to women than others. A lot of women look towards the operating engineers, heavy equipment operation. There's a lot that go into the bricklayers union, but not as bricklayers, as tile setters, as terrazzo floor installers, and so forth. And it's not always because of the physicality. It's, when you look at tile setting, that can be very creative. It's not always just, here's the same tile and lay it down on the floor. So I think we've made some inroads into it. I think women are starting to understand the kind of money they can make doing this, but it's still a bit of a battle, honestly, I think. And it's still breaking down that thought process that, girls don't do this. Well,
that's a stereotype.
Yeah, they do, and they do it well. And I think most of our training guys will tell you, women get the training much quicker than a lot of the guys do because they're willing to listen. Guys, you and I, we jump on that bulldozer like, we know what we're doing, and we don't. But a woman will get on there and say, okay, well, tell me what I'm supposed to do. So it's just a different approach and mentality to it.
Well, there's a lot of technology. You mentioned a bulldozer, and heavy industries has a tradition of using machinery and technology, but that's only becoming more pervasive. What are you seeing as far as going forward, as far as the technologies, the computers, and the machinery and the automation?
Well, I think the technology has impacted us positively, but more so on the what I would say is management side of whether it's the general contractor or the union. Scheduling technology, productivity technology, things like that where you can really measure things that are important on a job site. I don't think you're going to see anytime soon, autonomous bulldozers running around job sites. in some respects, they are autonomous now. If you look at the cracker plant, the volume of earth that
the cracker plant is a Shell is building a cracker plant,
right.
and what that is like it's a refinery of sorts of natural gas.
Right, and $6.5-7 billion project. But when they were doing all the earthwork, those graders and earth movers, you get in that machine in the morning and you're programming in GPS coordinates and all these other things, and the machine's really doing it, much like flying an airliner. You're there to monitor that machine and make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. I just don't foresee that anytime soon where that machine's going to go and do that by itself without some human interaction in there. Somebody could come up with a robot that can do drywall. I guess long after you and I are gone, they will. But so I don't think technology is so much on the actual production side, if you will, of producing the buildings and roads and so forth, but certainly on the management side of how you manage a project, productivity, things of that nature. Clearly it has.
And we're seeing that too, even on the white-collar side. They use terms like artificial intelligence and machine learning, which can basically, it might have used an architect to have to do manual calculations. Well, now they can use algorithms that can scale a project from basically from something the size of a gas station to something the size of an arena using all the various calculations. But a lot of times, too, when we talk about that, then we think about how Amazon is replacing retail. I heard someone on the radio recently describe it this way. He said, you can order a new pair of blue jeans from Amazon, but you're not going to be able to order a bridge on Amazon, or you can't order that highway on Amazon. Somebody still has to do that work. And I thought that was a pretty good characterization of that. And that kind of even goes to something that the Washington Post reported not too long ago. The Washington Post reported that there's been this rise the last couple of years of the building trades type jobs. Is there a reason why for the past 2 years or so we're seeing an increase in that?
Well, I think part of it is a lot of infrastructure needs to be built out in this country that we neglected for, really for decades. Certainly in our region here, between the Shell cracker plant that you described, construction in the healthcare industry between UPMC and Highmark, Allegheny Health Network, the infrastructure projects going on in terms of expressways and highways. Story I saw today that the current proposed federal budget has money in it for the lower locks and dams on the Mon River. So all these things just keep adding up. And if you look at the non-residential construction market here in southwestern Pennsylvania, a typical market, what would be considered a healthy normal year is probably about $2.8 billion, $2.9 billion. We're forecasting $5.5 billion for this year, and that's still going to continue to grow. So we're operating at nearly a double normal market. So obviously that demands more people to come into the industry. Overlay that as we look out 2 to 3 years, with the tail end of that baby boom really starting to exit the workforce, then we're going to have those needs to backfill those people leaving. So, the opportunities are just ripe in the industry right now. And, nobody can sit here with a crystal ball and say what's going to be going on in 15 years or 20 years or 25. But all indicators are that, this is a multi-decade event here, where this is going to continue to grow. And I think if we do things right as industries, as government regulators, in terms of how we take advantage of especially the gas industry here in the region, it could even be greater than that. So those opportunities are just endless. And, the one thing you said about blue-collar jobs, that to me is a big misnomer. If you go and Google and try and look up what's middle-class income, there really is no such thing, okay? The government has never said if you make from here to here, you're middle class. But if I said to you, you can make well over $100,000 a year, health care, pension, retirement benefits, and you're going to get 6 to 8 weeks off every year, okay? You would think, oh, wow, that's some kind of office job, right? Some kind of white collar thing. I'm, working at a bank or I'm working here. That's operating engineers. That's laborers. That's cement masons. I mean, it's across the board. So, blue collar, I guess, means more the physical nature of the work. But, these are every bit as much professional, white collar jobs. When I go into schools and talk to kids and the teachers and the counselors are there and they hear the kind of money these kids can be making, they're like, geez, I have like 3 degrees and I'm still paying off college loans and I might make half of what you're saying these kids can make. So, we've got to stop looking at these as these blue collar, subservient, less than something types of careers, because they're legit careers.
What you're really talking about is a mindset. And it sounds like the mindset is shifting when you go into these high schools. What do you think's making it shift outside of the money?
Well, I still think it comes down to money when parents sit there and look at $200,000 for a 4-year degree. And then, of course, everything else going on with all these scandals over how kids are getting into school. A quick analysis, take a kid that goes into the 4-year carpenter program and a kid that went to college, both at 18. When they're done in 4 years, that kid in the carpenters will have made probably about $200,000 and some because you're paid during training. He'll have no debt because we pay for his training. He will have had health care. He will have been earning pension benefits for 4 years. And now he's going to ratchet up to $35 an hour plus benefits as a journey person. A kid coming out of college, short of having some very type of advanced degree or high demand, even if you're an accounting major, you're going to come out and maybe make $55,000, at least initially. And then you get into degrees that are more innocuous, mass communications, business administration, philosophy, things like that. What skills do you have? What career path do you really have at that point?
It has to be defined by the individual.
Exactly. And so that's a $500,000 swing right at that point. So I think parents are starting to understand that. I think kids are starting to understand that. I'm going to pay all this money to get this degree that doesn't even give me a clear path as to what I'm going to do, when I get out of school. I just laugh about it because, my son is in school now and, he's in a finance accounting major. But when you add these electives in, which are about half of the course load, is it worth, $1,000 a credit hour for someone to take a course called the history of hip hop, because they have to have so many electives. So I think you've really got to start to question that. And this is not anti-college because it is appropriate for a lot of careers. If you want to be an engineer, in the construction industry, of course you have to have a college degree to do that. Accounting, a dentist, a pharmacist, any of these things, sure, that's where college degrees make sense. And to go in and try and figure it out while you're there, that's a very costly thought process.
Jeff Nobers, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
To learn more about our guest Jeff Nobers and about the future of work for people without 4-year degrees, please check our show notes at shapingopinion.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please let people know by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe to the Shaping Opinion podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'd love to hear from you. On Twitter, just tweet to us at Shaping Opinion, or you could get in touch with us through our website, shapingopinion.com. We have a Facebook group that you can join, a Facebook page you can follow, and we're on Instagram at Shaping Opinion. Shaping Opinion is a production of O'Brien Communications. This is where we talk about people, events, and things that have shaped the way we think. Until next time, I'm Tim O'Brien.